I am Patty Willardsen, founder of 3D Bows Academy, and today for our tips and tricks, we're going to be talking about how to do a touch-up. I'm going to go over 3 different scenarios that you may face when your clients come back healed to you and how to do the touch-up the proper way. So the first scenario would be they come into you healed. The inside strokes look like the color that you want them to be, but outside they're just not quite as bright as you need them. So right here, I have a demonstration. The outer strokes are just a little bit lighter than the inner strokes. Second scenario is the outside strokes healed great, but you lost all the inside strokes. Right here, the outside strokes look great, but there's no inside strokes. The third scenario that we may face is they come back a little bit blotchy. Some are lighter, some are darker, some healed great, some didn't heal in at all. So let's talk about these 3 scenarios and what you would do. First scenario, your client comes in, the inside strokes look great, the outside strokes just look a little bit too light. So I'm going to take that same color that I used my first time and I'm going to hit all my strokes that look a little bit too light. The strokes that healed a great color, my stroke looks crisp, I don't need to touch it. Don't go back through it. You only need to touch the ones that look like they didn't heal the color that you wanted them to heal. So the first scenario, when the outside strokes look just a little bit lighter than the inside strokes, I want you to take your ink and go directly over the line that you see healed in. Don't go beside it. Don't go right beside it. If you are not directly in that line, it's going to heal thicker and more blurred out. You have to stay right in that same exact stroke. So I'll place right in that stroke and fill in the color that I want. So I'll do this the entire way, going over every stroke that healed a little bit too light, not hitting the strokes that healed the color that I want. If they healed the color you want, you leave them be. Second scenario, my outside strokes healed great, my inside didn't take it all. In fact, I think I get this one the most from people that called in. If your outside strokes are great, if they're the color that you want, leave them. Don't touch them. You don't need to go over them again. Only fill in the middle area that's missing. Now, if you have a stroke that healed too ashy, maybe all your strokes healed perfect except for one stroke on the outside looks too ashy, then go through it with either gray vanish or ungray. If you're using LI pigments, those are the 2 colors that we're going to use to neutralize that ashy tone. If you have strokes that look great, but one of them looks too warm, then maybe use olive mod or brow mod to neutralize that tone. So again, your client comes into you healed, and the whole outline looks great, but the inside looks like they're not there or they're too light. What are we going to do? Fill in the inside. So again, right where my strokes didn't heal, I'm filling in that inside. Careful not to cross over any strokes. You can merge into the stroke, but you never want to cross over the stroke or else you're going to get a bleed out. Be very careful when you're doing a touch-up not to go in between your strokes if it's not needed. The strokes should be a millimeter apart from each other. If you don't need to put strokes in between each other, then don't do it. If you have a stroke that's wider than a millimeter apart and it looks like there's a funky gap, then you can go ahead and add a stroke in between. But on a touch-up, you really only want to hit the same strokes that you originally put in on the first session. On a touch-up, you don't want to go in between every single stroke and fill in every single hole because that's just going to turn into a blurred powder brow. We only want to hit the strokes that we deposited the first time. Scenario number 3, they come back blotchy. I've got some light spots, some spots that healed the color I want, and some spots that have nothing. What am I going to do with this scenario? Well, my lighter strokes, I'm going to take that same color and go right back over them. The strokes that didn't heal in, I'm going to take that same color and make myself some new strokes. The strokes that look perfect, I'm not going to touch them. So one of the biggest questions I get is what happens if like the very bottom of my stroke healed good, but the top disappeared? Do I hit the whole thing? No, You don't need to hit the whole thing. The part that healed great, leave that be. You don't need to mess with it. Start right at the very end where that color stopped. Start your stroke there and continue the rest of the stroke with the color you used the first time. Be careful not to get too many different colors in there. You don't want to cause a rainbow. So if I used mochaccino my first time, unless they want to go a darker shade, I'm going to use mochaccino again on my touch-up. If they want to go a darker shade, then I'll grab out the color that's one step up from mochaccino. But usually on my touch-up, I want to stick with that same exact color. So be careful not to tilt your blade. Be careful not to go in between your strokes. You want to stay directly on your stroke. So I'm going to take my tool and I'm going to go directly through that stroke, not beside it. I'm not starting in it and then slipping out to the side of it. I'm right inside of that stroke the entire time. Keep that tool nice and straight. You want a really, really crisp stroke. So I'm just going over the strokes that are a little bit lighter. The strokes that healed dark, now I don't need to hit that stroke, right? But let's see, right here, it looks like I have maybe the bottom of it healed and the top of it healed. I'm missing just the middle part. Just hit the middle part. I'm going to start right at the end of it, connect through. That's it. I don't need to go over what's healed in the right way. So my client comes back to me and she looks like she's healed the start of my stroke and the end of my stroke, but doesn't look like she kept the middle of the stroke. That could be because my pressure was lighter on the middle. It could be because I accidentally lifted out in the middle. Maybe I went too deep on the outside, so the middle didn't stay as well. So when that scenario happens, do you need to hit the entire stroke, even the two parts that healed in? No, you only have to hit the part that did not heal in. So I'll start right here at the very end of that stroke that healed, take it all the way to the starting of the other stroke that healed. I'm just filling in that gap, that missing part. Now, when I say filling in the gap, I don't mean filling in between two strokes. You want to stay directly on the strokes that you put in before. I'm just meaning filling in the middle of the stroke that didn't hold as well. I'm going to show you guys an example in a picture that's going to pop up on the screen right now of why you don't want to do a touch-up where you fill in between your strokes. If you're not staying directly in the strokes that you did the first time, so if I don't stay directly on every single one of these strokes, if I go in between these strokes where you see this white, if I fill in those holes, that's going to turn into a solid blurred brow. If you want a hair stroke brow, you have to stay directly on the hair stroke.